Hey there, I'm Scott Winfield, and welcome to Victorian Opera's web series, Artists in Isolation. On this episode, our guest is much-loved baritone, Sam Dundas. Sam, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now, where in the world are you bunkering down?
Currently at my house in Launceston, which, Tassie, I have to say, bar a few short weeks during which we had the sort of northwest outbreak, has been a really great place to
Absolutely
go through this. Certainly, we're lucky to have some space and a garden and things like that to help break the boredom a little bit. And obviously it's a pretty beautiful place and there's not a lot of people around, so I certainly feel very fortunate that we're down here at the moment. What
prompted you to move to Launceston?
It's beauty, certainly it's affordability. I mean, the circumstance arose because in 2015 I had sort of begun to be more freelance. I had just started 2015, I just met my now fiancée Beck, and she got a job down here with Tasdance, which is the great state contemporary company. So she was coming down here for 2 months, I didn't have anything on. And so I just sort of came down with her. And I don't think either of us had ever really considered that notion of a tree change. But we came down here and she was working and I had just a chance, I guess, to explore, and very quickly fell in love with the place. But also I remember looking looking through the paper and looking in the classifieds, and all of a sudden it was like zeros were missing from the houses, and we were like, oh, hang on a minute. And so then we went back to the mainland, and we went back and did a whole bunch, did our normal life back there, and we were back in Sydney, and then Beck got some more contracts down here and I was more freelance, and this house popped up, and the real estate agent actually picked us up from the airport and took us straight to the viewing of the house, which, classic Launceston service. And then we were fortunate enough to get this, and then that's history. And Beck is down here full time now, and I sort of come and go, and it works for us. I realise now I'm not really a city slicker, and don't miss the majority of things that people think are, I guess, necessary.
As a wine lover, I was curious to know, how has wine featured in your ISO experience?
Like probably most people, we probably indulged in a bit too much of it at the commencement. I guess one of probably the greatest downside of our ISO experience so far is that we had to cancel our wedding.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, no, that's all right. It's water under the bridge now.
When was it scheduled for?
We were due to get married on the 28th of March. So, we had...
bugger.
Yeah, we had sort of 40 people coming from interstate, and that was a big thing. And, I had been working in Beechworth, sort of in mid-March, and Beck had been with me, and we sort of got back to the state, and that's when things... there was a period of days where it sort of became more and more real and more evident about what was going to happen. And so we got back and were really resistant to the idea of cancelling, postponing, whatever it might be. Then over a series of days, we just sort of had lots of discussions about the fact that it would be the right decision and that everyone would understand. And I think for both of us, we felt very fortunate that we got to make the decision. And then 2 days later, the government made those border changes, and it was out of our hands. So at least we feel like, that was something we were in control of, and as sad as it was, and certainly on the specific day, on the 28th, it wasn't really a fun day at all, but now, given everything else that's happened, it seems, it seems like an afterthought, and we can get married when the time is right, and we'll just have all the more reason to celebrate.
Yes.
Yeah.
As a wine lover, how did you decide on the wines that you're planning to serve at your wedding, and will they be returning to Wedding 2.0? Because I imagine that would be important for you.
Yeah, good question. And it was, it was something that, because Beck is the same, Beck is a wine lover as well, and she actually runs one of the Tamar Valley wineries here. So, wine was always going to be an important part of the beverage service, I guess. So yeah, we had spent some time, sort of curating a wine list and working out what we were going to drink, what we thought people would like. Certainly, her discount was very helpful. And so
we always love a discount.
Not what you spend.
Doesn't matter where it is.
Not what you spend, it's what you save. So
exactly.
In terms of 2.0, Wedding 2.0, it's interesting because we bought a very specific vintage of Pinot Gris for the wedding because it was an absolute cracker vintage. And yeah, I'm starting to get slightly nervous about when the next wedding will be and how cracker that Gris will be. So we're either going to do a lot of gifting in the very foreseeable future so that that wine does see is experienced at its best, or we better get married really quickly.
Either way, there is no wrong.
There's no
wrong solution to that problem.
Well, the big thing is now we haven't actually been drinking for really a couple of over a month now. We've had sporadic breaks, but we just decided, after like sort of 2.5 months, we just felt like we needed a break, and I have to say I've been really enjoying that. So there's a lot of wine getting better downstairs, I guess would be the best way to describe that.
With your fiance and yourself both being performers, what has this experience been like from a creative point of view?
It's really interesting because really for my whole, let's say, adult life, I've never felt overly creative. Like I consider, in a roundabout way, I sort of consider myself a cover band because, like I go off and sing, other people's music. And,
that's very funny.
And so like to some degree, someone can never criticise me for what I created. They can only criticise me for my interpretation of. And whilst, yes, development of characters and things like that, have a creative sense, I guess. I don't know. Like I've never overly felt like I had a creative voice or a creative need. And certainly the first couple of months of this were pretty debilitating to my artistic side. I wasn't overly interested in singing. Yes. Weirdly, whilst the singing fell away, I was still doing a lot of extracurricular stuff. So still doing German, I've got back into music theory after 15 years, and music theory is a weird one for me because I didn't study at high school, went to university, did the sort of summer school, went to university. I always think I bluffed my way through university. So, and then to some degree,
whatever you did, it seems to have paid off.
Well, yeah, but it's weird, like because I mean, I feel like I'm going to sell myself out by saying this. Like I feel like, I've always felt like an imposter doing this, but I feel like I've learnt. I know what I need to know about music, I guess, and then not being creative, the need to know to know things like theory and harmony and those sorts of things really in depth has never sort of been a requirement. I mean, harmony is one of those funny ones where I can only sing one note at once. So, and someone gave me that note to sing. So I've sort of, whether I've been ignorant or been ignoring it, just late last year, something sort of happened where I thought, hang on, I really need to start addressing this again because it's, to some degree, it's just, I should know it and I should make myself learn it again. So, I got a music teacher down here late last year and got straight back into theory. And I jumped back into grade 2, like pretty rudimentary stuff. And then had sort of spent, slowly but surely building that up and returning, I want to say returning some of that knowledge, but probably giving myself that knowledge in the first place.
Yes.
Like I consider myself a hard worker, but a hard worker when there's a task in front of me, and there's
when there's a clear goal and there's a clear goalpost to work towards.
Absolutely. And so as they began to disappear, I guess I found it much harder to do. To stay in my routine of practicing every day, and as I said, like I've done the extracurriculars nearly every day. Like I think my Duolingo German streak is now up to like 145 days or something.
Don't you love that little bing?
Oh, I love that little guy, except I'm not sure, sentences like the dolphin goes to the bank are overly necessary or will be overly helpful if and when I...
You haven't spent enough time in Berlin,
Right,
Sam. You haven't spent enough time in Berlin.
Yeah, people are always like, oh, Duolingo, it's great. I'm like, yeah, it is. And I definitely have found myself needing to do extracurricular stuff, so like looking back at grammar and looking at other stuff. But anyway... So I was kind of happy to maintain those things, but the singing had sort of fallen away. But just recently, just in the last sort of month, and this is probably giving a lot away. I think I probably really hit the nadir of this experience about a month ago. I was very flat, very unmotivated. I'd sort of, again, like in terms of my work ethic, I've always been a real task-orientated, purpose-requiring person, and I think this very quickly erased a lot of that. And so, early on, I did things like paint the house, or paint the outside of the house, and lots of gardening and that sort of stuff. And about a month ago, I guess I'd run out of ideas. I'd run out of, I'd stopped baking bread, I had just kind of hit the wall, and weirdly, I was downstairs looking for something, and I found a MIDI controller keyboard that my brother had left here, and my brother's he's a famous musician and quite an extraordinary composer and sound engineer. The list goes on, and he had left it here, and I sort of pulled it out. I had never really thought how to do it or anything like that. And then very quickly sort of found myself, I guess, noodling some music out. And, when I talk about not being creative and I talk about not really having anything to say, I don't think I've ever, because of my middling to basic piano skills, an ability to be over-expressive or to express what I was attempting to say was never really possible. So, now... writing one line at once, or effectively that's what I'm doing. I've been able to sort of get the creative juices flowing, and I'm really enjoying it. And then now find myself spending 4 to 6 hours a day looking at harmony and music theory.
Oh wow!
And, getting back into music history and looking at the timeline of where modern music has come from, and I'm just finding it so enriching. I mean, sometimes I look at figured bass and things like that, and it just looks like gibberish. But like learning any new language, and whilst I feel so sheepish because it's not a new language for me, but
it's a new way of looking at the language.
Yeah,
but I think from what you're saying, in part, the way that you're using music is quite different, particularly if you're tapping into parts of your mind and parts of your sort of artistic self where you're leaning on different ways to express that.
In terms of being able to have something to do when I wake up and have something that's really tickling my interests again is really great. And then, the great positive really to come out of that is that I'm singing again. So, all of a sudden through looking at more and more music, through developing ideas of music, you find yourself wanting to sing again. So it's funny, just tracking the journey of this whole isolation experience.
I would love to reflect on the role that Victorian Opera has played in your life. You've been with the company since its very beginning, originally as a developing artist, and have since appeared in many of the company's productions. Could you tell us, about your experiences with the company and what stands out to you?
Victorian Opera plays this enormous chapter in me, I guess, finding my voice for the first time. I think, Richard Gill was once described me as the sort of diamond in the rough. He sort of thought, oh, well, there's a talent there and he may or may not work out how to use it. And I couldn't think of a more apt description. And I sometimes still think that. But yeah, I had sort of, by 2006 when I joined the company, I was in a strange place where, I'd spent a couple of years singing at high school, had gone off and studied music, and wouldn't say I was the best music student or overly interested. I sort of felt like I probably had a head start in terms of being able to sing, but didn't really know how to acknowledge, or probably wasn't willing to do the hard work required. And so when Richard and I first crossed paths was my audition for the company as part of the Young Artist Program. And as I said, that was his initial impression, and that's why he took me on. And then I spent 3 years really under Richard's tutelage and Richard's guidance and Richard's patience in sort of cajoling me to find a way to develop and a way to go forward and a way to learn music and a way to develop as an artist. And so, I mean, there's no question that I wouldn't be in the position now if it wasn't for that. And so that alone will always stand the company in a certain stead for me. But then artistically, and it's 14 years later, really. Like artistically, when I look back on a lot of the significant roles to me, a lot of them have been at VO. And it's always been an environment where an artist is allowed to develop and discover and then display what they can offer to these works. And I think organisations that champion not only the artist but the ensemble, it's just a great place to work. It's really satisfying as an artist.
Of all the roles that you've performed for the company, which stand out to you?
Pelléas and Melisande to me was
yes,
unquestionably the greatest challenge of my career. And maybe I'm giving too much away, but to some degree I thought it was quite apt that Richard Mills said kind of the same thing that Richard Gill had said so many years ago, and I had auditioned for it, and Richard said, I sang and because it was a much lower role than I was used to singing, and I was very conscious of that, but came in and did the audition, and Hawdy Hall always makes everyone sound great. I think I was a little bit crook at the time too, so of course the bass notes were working. And Richard was so positive and helpful in me learning that section and being able to deliver that audition. But he also said, it's a risk, but who would we be if we didn't give opportunities to Australian artists? And frankly, for me as an artist and a person, when someone lays a challenge like that, my imperative to prove them right really spurns me to greater things. And I don't think I've ever worked so hard vocally, physically, musically to get something to a place where people would think it was possible. And I remember it was 13 months between when I got it and between when we started rehearsals, and I had countless people tell me it was a terrible idea. It was the wrong role. And yeah, absolutely, when you look at the majority of people who have sung it, my voice type is probably not the one you would associate with that. But
how do you overcome comments like that?
Sometimes I think I didn't. Sometimes, I was feeling reasonably insecure about it in the weeks leading up to it. In fact, even when I first arrived and had that very first music call with Siobhan and Phoebe, and straight away, and that's one of the great things about VO is that instantly there's positivity and there's reinforcement, and there's, if there is something lacking, it's not about letting that person know in a way that it will undermine them. It's about letting them know and saying that they, we'll be with you every step of the way to get you there. And, even throughout the rehearsal process, I mean, I had this hilarious routine where, I'd spent 13 months learning it, but, French was probably not one of my more natural languages, again, where it sat vocally. So I had this very funny routine where I'd wake up in the morning, go to the coffee shop, spend an hour, drink coffee, spend an hour looking at the score, go to rehearsals all day, come home, eat dinner, go to the wine bar, which was next to the coffee shop at night, drink 2 glasses of red because red has an effect on the lower part of voices, and spend another hour in there. And I did that for, sort of nearly the first 3 weeks of rehearsals.
It sounds like quite a nice routine.
Yeah. It could have been worse. Yeah, it could have been worse. I need more low rolls just to give me an excuse. And so, when I look at that experience, I've never worked harder. And have probably never felt more proud of a role, not only a role I've done, but of an ensemble that I've been part of. And I mean that to the wider ensemble too, to Libby as director, to Richard as conductor, and to really everyone who was involved.
As our final question, I'd love to know, what's the first thing that you'd like to do after this time passes completely?
Oh, completely? Oh, I'd love to get married. That would be great. That's the probably simple answer. Yeah, I'd love to get married. I think Beck and I would like to do a bit of travel, and even if that's just jumping on the Spirit of Tasmania and getting to see my family, and we're kind of hoping that'll be before my nephew's first birthday in July, and then go to Adelaide to see Beck's family. Make some music again, that'd be great. I really miss the rehearsal room. I miss being in a room of like-minded people looking to create something. We wouldn't mind travelling, I guess. We missed out on a honeymoon and those sorts of things, but we've all missed out on something. So yeah, get back to some travel and get a hug from my parents, I think would be the top of my list at the moment.
Sam, it's been such a pleasure to chat to you, and please stay safe.
Thanks, Scott.
For more chats with artists in isolation, you can follow Victorian Opera across social media or visit victorianopera.com.au. I'm Scott Winfield. Thanks for watching.